in trouble and you need a helping hand, and nothing, whoa, nothing is going right. Close your eyes and think of me, and soon I will be there to brighten up even your darkest night.
Welcome to Bay Area Psychology. I must confess that tonight's topic, adult sibling relationships, was largely inspired by my affection for my own sister, Alice. When speaking of adult siblings, Francis Klagsburn refers to mixed feelings, where warmth can sometimes glide into hostility and resentment can be contained when desired by love and loyalty. Our relationships with our siblings are seldom clear. In fact, research with adults shows that many of us continue to play out sibling roles we had as children with our partners, employers, and friends. It has been my clinical experience that sibling relationships become especially crucial as our parents age, and we are often forced into cooperative caretaking roles, which may release old, unresolved rivalries and competitiveness. After all, Mom always loved you best. While parents have long been recognized for their influence on child development, we turn our focus tonight on the impact of siblings. With us to do this is Los Altos marriage and family counselor Ruth Anderson and Mountain View psychologist Edward Rochar. I want to thank you both for joining me today to talk about this topic.
Good to be here.
Thank you. You know, prior to opening tonight, Ruth and I were talking briefly about family roles and how we do continue to play those as adults. And I wondered if you wanted to have a few comments about that.
Sure. Well, you know, growing up, to keep the family balanced, we take on roles to kind of have a place in the family. The most popular ones are the hero. That's the one that's kind of shows the community that this family is okay, the one popular in school, the one that helps out with the younger children. Then there's the mascot. That's the one that is usually the youngest one, the lighthearted one, the one that cheers us up. There's also the scapegoat. That's the one that usually cannot compete with this hero that's doing so well, so they'll take on the role as the troublemaker, the one that gets attention by acting out or not following the rules. And then we also have the lost child, and that's the one that's quiet. They learn to kind of stay out of the limelight so they don't get picked on, they don't get asked to do things they don't want to do. The problem with these roles is that it's not an innate ability that we have. It's a way we learn to survive in our family. And we tend to keep playing those roles as we become adults. There's no magical time when we say, oh, I'm 18. I don't have to do this anymore.
And I would imagine part of the challenge, and this has probably been your clinical experience as well, is you find people who early on locked into those roles and are not even aware of it at a conscious level. And so then that gets played out in their other relationships. I'm sure you've seen that.
Sure. And, you know, a lot of psychologists emphasize the relationship between the child and the parents, and to the exclusion of the relationship to his or her siblings. And those are equally important. That's what you're pointing out here, that how do I relate to others, and in the peer relations, those can be influenced by the sib relationships just as much as relating to authority may be an issue of parent to child. You know, carried on into adulthood.
Absolutely. I mean, my experience is that then what happens is we get this picture of ourselves in the world, and like you said, in the way we relate to other people. One of the things I wanted to begin with tonight is a graphic I have prepared looking at the different levels of closeness that siblings tend to have. And I thought we'd begin with the first. This is from The 5 Types of Sibling Relationships by Deborah Gold. As intimate. This refers to siblings who see themselves as best friends. They're deeply devoted, may be more psychologically connected to each other than their spouses. And I have seen this actually clinically, particularly between maybe siblings where one of them might have some sort of disability or be at a disadvantage in some way. And so over time, they have learned to rely on each other, almost to the exclusion sometimes, as the ability to rely on others. And I don't know if either of you have any experience with that, having seen that.
Well, I have seen that working as I do with alcoholic families, that mother and dad have not been there for them because they haven't been able to. So the children have really become parents of one another, and they take that role not into other just relationships, but into work settings, you know, neighborhood settings. They're the ones that do the caretaking.
Okay. And so then what happens is that I'm sure it must be interesting to marry someone and then to bring someone else into the family. If your primary relationship is a sibling, I would imagine it would be hard for your partner to adjust to that level of closeness. I mean, you know, I've had couples say, I feel excluded, you know, when when her family gets together and she gets with her sisters, or I feel like I'm just a spectator, I'm no longer a part of that process.
Oh, that's very true. I see that in my family more culturally, where I came from an ethnic background where we knew everything about everyone on a daily basis. And I married an Anderson, and they tend to be a little more withdrawn and more independent in their family lifestyle. And then the two of us came together with a crash.
Okay. Because maybe your expectations about the level of closeness in a family were going to be different.
Yes.
Okay, I would picture that. Let's take a look at our second level of closeness. Maybe we're not best friends, but perhaps we're congenial. We're good, we view ourselves as good rather than best friends, warmly caring and supportive, and sometimes we may be annoyed or competitive on occasion. And in addition to that, we have loyal siblings. Closeness based on a sense of family rather than personal involvement, a blood is thicker than water approach. So in terms of congenial, you do have that closeness, but there's an occasional disagreement or signs of conflict with each other. What? Go ahead.
And it can range pretty dramatically within a family. I'm thinking of my mother's family and how different the relationships between the sisters. There was always a kind of loyalty, and yet it somehow allowed for a level of conflict and things that I was unaware of even as an adult, that there were conflicts going on, or this was my favorite sister and all that. I was unaware. It's really quite interesting, and what makes it even more interesting is that these have influences on your life, say as the child of these adult siblings, and how what kind of impact that has on you. And it's not quite family secrets, but it's part of the family schemata that isn't necessarily revealed right off the bat, and you may or may not have real good access to it, but it still may have an effect on you.
Okay, so there may be old skirmishes in the past that, as the children of our parents, we may not be quite aware of, but there are some feelings there that do continue to get played out.
And ties and good feelings and all. So. Well,
you're also making the point, I think, too, that the loyalty aspect does allow there to be some conflict. You know, it's kind of that saying, well, you know, while I pick my friends, my family is my family for life. And so at some level, I think there is a taking for granted, and we can actually be more abusive to each other in our families than we are to people outside of our families, and that does take its toll.
For many people, I think it's a real odd situation when you feel so angry at or hostile toward a sib, and yet you feel like that's still your brother or sister, and what can you do? And it almost becomes a trapped feeling, I think, for some people, that they can't betray the family or the ties, and at the same time there's significant conflicts going on.
I remember my sister visiting. I grew up in a family where we were always, shall we say, having conflicts. That was part of life, and my husband's family quite different. And she said after visiting me how quiet our household seemed. And she found it rather boring, I think, because we had rules and, do the, quote, more proper things than my ethnic background, which was a lot more vocal.
Okay, so then in your background, the skirmishes were on the table. I mean, we all knew what we were fighting about.
Yes, it really startled my husband. He thought, wow, what was he getting into?
Well, I'm sure visiting his family, which was calm, must have been peculiar for you.
Right, it felt like something out of the Brady Bunch, you know.
Oh.
It just didn't feel real to me. And I think what we've tried to do in our own family is have a bit of both.
Okay. Okay. So, you know, sometimes you mentioned adult children of alcoholics. Actually, I have seen that loyalty type of sibling relationship play out in terms of multiple trips to detox centers, feeling like, you know, even though I don't really want to be involved with this person, if this person wasn't a sibling, I really wouldn't want to have a connection with them, but feeling obligated to continue in that cycle. And what do you do with that? When somebody comes in and they say, you know, I've been giving my brother money for years, he's already been to 3 detox, I don't know what to do, he's still my brother.
It's really hard because they consider that loving. I think what I'm trying to do is educate people that that really isn't very loving or supportive, that maybe detaching with love is really the answer. Giving them the chance to be responsible for themselves is a very loving thing to do. And I encourage them to go to 12-step meetings, whether it's CODA, Codependence Anonymous, or Al-Anon, to be with other people in this struggle. Because what seems so nurturing when someone is little is really not very nurturing when someone is in an adult body.
Right.
And should be acting as an adult.
Capable of adult things and levels of responsibility. One of the problems with that, however, is that not with the strategy, but with implementing it, is that if the family culture is one of enmeshment, of closeness, or then the person, by saying, I'm not going to participate, I'm not in this cycle of addiction or in the craziness of the family or whatever, not only stands against or in opposition to or withdraws from the sib that's the alcoholic or having problems, or the chronic debtor or whatever, this sort of thing, but he or she also ends up distancing himself from the entire family, as a whole, or can be seen as a real, traitor and unfeeling. So the step becomes even more complicated because the whole family system demands a certain level of involvement, and the person has a hard time stepping out of that childhood role developed in childhood because of the expectations of the family as an adult.
I'm going to need to interrupt here for a moment, and we're going to take a quick break, and when we come back we'll continue our discussion. In fact, when we return, we will resume our popular spot, In Your Own Words, to learn more about sibling relationships. Stay tuned. What it's like between you and your brothers and sisters?
In my particular family, being from the Oriental family, we work harmoniously with each other. We don't compete with each other. But when there is a problem, we try to work it out, assuming that my oldest brother, or the oldest brother, we looked up to him as kind of giving us a guideline as to how we can help. But other than that, as a family, we kind of work together for one purpose. We don't have any rivalry of any sort, so that's basically where I'm from. And most Oriental family are that way anyway.
Thank you very much. Can you tell me what it's like with your siblings?
With my siblings, I have 2 brothers and no sisters. I'm the oldest one. And we have a little bit of a clash with the middle child. I guess because being the middle child, he decided to